Good morning. We missed you. It is July the 18th, the morning of, and it is a great hot morning. The summer is just going by. What a time to be alive. But today, we will be talking about two very interesting topics, and we have two very interesting, one interesting, one not as interesting guests this morning. We're going to be talking about Gravitas and the Scattered Ministry today. You are listening to the Dear Church Podcast. Welcome. Welcome to the Dear Church Podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Sam Yang.
I'm Jun-Suk.
I'm Brian.
And today, we are going to be highlighting two ministries that are in our church, the men's ministry and the college ministry, the Gravitas men's ministry and the Scattered college ministry and their leaders. And we have with us Brian and Jun-Suk. So, brothers, could you just introduce yourselves? I know people have heard you 90,000 times, but if you could just kind of introduce us to who you are.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian, and I am helping out and helping lead the men's ministry that has recently launched called Gravitas.
I'm Jun-Suk, and I am also on staff here alongside Sam, Brian, and Christine, and I help out and help serve the college ministry here at CGS.
Yes, you guys are helping in various different ministries, Gravitas, college, Scattered ministry. Let me just ask, I guess right off the bat, why Gravitas, Brian? I know you made up that name. No one speaks Latin, so I don't understand why. Let me rephrase the question. Yeah, Brian, so you made up the Gravitas name. When did you become a Latin? Let me rephrase the question. So Brian is leading the Gravitas ministry, which is Latin.
You gotta keep all of that in, right? You gotta do the beep thing.
I really thought it was called Testify.
Yeah.
So
there's a strong case made for it.
So Brian, you made the name Gravitas, a dead language. No one speaks it, but yet you persisted on making it Gravitas. What is Gravitas? What is it?
So basically you're saying like nobody asked for this.
No. Everybody asked for it. But I'm just curious as to what made you go with that verse. What made you go with Gravitas?
Actually, the inspiration came from this book that Pastor Eugene recommended me to read, which is It Is Good to Be a Man by Michael Foster. And so he talks about the concept of gravitas a lot in that book. And so to be honest, that's more or less where I got it from. Just to explain what the term actually means. So as Sam said, it is a Latin word. So I guess, it's a dead language. But gravitas refers, at least in the Latin, it refers to a man's weightiness and
like how much he weighs.
Maybe it could be. It could be
you
physical.
Have very little gravitas.
So gravitas is a little broader than that. Fortunately for so gravitas is a Roman virtue. It's a Latin term, and basically what it refers to is a man's weightiness, his dignity. And so if you've ever met someone where you recognize like, oh, this man has, I guess, a weight or even authority to the way he speaks, the way he carries himself, that is gravitas. And from a biblical sense, when we look at Adam created, or even just humanity created as the image of God, we understand that man has glory, right? God is the one who bestows glory. So glory is something that everyone has, every man has, but it's only something that God bestows onto us. Gravitas, on the other hand, is that glory lived out and recognized by others. So in that sense, I think gravitas was something that we've been praying for our men to grow in and have a lot. And even when we look at the verse in Titus 2:2.
Titus 2 verse 2 reads, older men are to be sober-minded, dignified, self-controlled, sound in faith and love and in steadfastness.
Yeah, so even that word right there, dignified, is closely linked with gravitas. And if you actually look at the King James Version, which we don't look at a lot, but the translation there is actually grave, right? Which is, related to gravity. And again, that's also related to weightiness. So I think we're in a time where, especially with the whole ideologies that are going on nowadays, it's becoming less and less, it's becoming more and more difficult to distinguish even like what are masculine traits, right? What are masculine traits, what are feminine traits, and we're kind of all moving toward this, I don't know, I don't want to just call it like non-binary, like androgyny type of understanding of what gender and gender roles and gender traits are. But one of the things that we want to do is we want to understand what the Bible has to say about what it means to be a man. And so this is something that we hoped for this ministry and we hope to grow in.
One of the things that I really appreciate about Brian, and Jintuk, you could add in as well, is whenever he's passionate about something, all conversations lead there. So for a good year, every single conversation, how are you? Well, something, CRT. And so now it's all about this LGBTQ movement. I think it's because you're leading the Gravitas ministry that we want to clearly define what is a man, what is a woman, and we want to stand by biblical principles of what the Bible tells us a man is or what the Bible tells us a woman is. And so that's one thing that I appreciate about you, the only one.
Yeah, and just to add on, I think many people don't know this, but Brian actually, upon joining our staff at CGS, this is one of the first things that he began working on. So it's not like we're just reacting to what culture is doing in coming up with this men's ministry. This is something that's been in the works for the past over a year now. So.
Yeah, definitely. Good to have you on board, Brian.
Thank you.
Now, the name Scattered is the name of our college ministry. So could you just kind of tell us a little bit about the name and why you guys went with the name Scattered?
The name actually came about before I even came on staff at CGS. So, Sam, you and I were both a part of our college ministry ever since before we were CGS.
Yes.
When we were just the English ministry of our mother church. Now having the name The Church Gathered and Scattered, I think the name Scattered refers to our college students probably in the most tangible way as they're scattered throughout the country at their various campuses throughout the year. So I think in understanding that, we are the church when we gather together on Sunday, but at the same time, each individual person, each individual member of our congregation also individually makes up this church. And as we are scattered, whether it be locally to our workplaces, our homes, or throughout the country, or even abroad as our college students do go abroad from time to time, we understand that each member of Christ's body, whether we're gathered or scattered, we are the church. So I think that was the rationale behind how the name came about.
You mentioned the name Scattered. Interestingly enough, did you know that when we first created this podcast, we wanted to call it the Scattered Podcast? Interesting origin story. But we thought that because the college ministry name was Scattered, it would be a little confusing because the whole purpose of, this podcast is to equip and to encourage and to edify our members, believers, as they are scattered throughout the week before and after they come back together to join on Sunday. So it was Scattered, but then, it became Dear Church. Do you know who thought of Dear Church? The name?
You?
No, it wasn't me.
Who was it? Christine.
Nope. It was Angela.
Wow.
Thank you for your answers, brothers. So I wanted to just kind of dive in a little bit deeper beyond the name. The purpose. What is the purpose of men's ministry? What is the purpose of college ministry? What is the purpose and I guess reasoning for having these ministries?
I think this was something that even, the elders and Christine, they thought about, did they really need, an edify ministry, like a separate women's ministry, where I guess they just kind of specialize on things that would just be taught, to the sisters in the church. And I don't think it's necessarily something that every church has. Not every church has a women's ministry. Not every church has a men's ministry.
Right.
And sometimes, the Sunday preaching and just the overall ministering to the congregation as a whole does suffice. But I think for our church, it was something that a lot of the sisters and the brothers wanted. Right?
Yes,
it's something
definitely.
they wanted, and at the end of the day, it's a tool, right? It's a tool that helps, and especially for Christine as one of the sisters who oversees the younger women in the church. I think it's truly helpful for the sisters in that regard. But Edify started first, and then I think as Edify kind of started growing, the men were kind of left with less to do, less activity, and then so there was definitely a desire for the men to have their own thing and grow in that regard as well. I think one of the concerns is always, in these gender-specific ministries, do we end up always talking about, let's say, like Proverbs 31, or do we end up only talking about like, biblical masculinity?
Right.
And I think that's a valid concern. But fortunately, we do have the preaching of the word on Sundays and things like that to always be sufficient. But especially in this day and age, as I said before, it is almost difficult, and we've almost forgotten what the Bible has to say about what it means to be a man, right? And so especially, and we'll talk about that later, but we are going through many books on, how is a man supposed to lead the family, right? How is a man supposed to serve in the church? How is a man even supposed to raise up younger men, right, as disciples? So those are things that I think our church can definitely grow in, and I'm looking forward to us kind of delving into those resources more.
So if you could kind of, I guess, summarize or highlight the purpose of this ministry in one sentence, how would you do that?
So on paper, our purpose is literally to develop men to live out the glory of God by becoming more like Jesus.
Oh, did you drop the mic after that? Don't drop these though.
Yeah. These are on stands, so I can't drop them.
Very expensive.
Yeah, very expensive. Thank you for that, Brian. Junseok, I wanted to move on to the scattered ministry. What is the purpose, and do we need a college ministry?
So there's a Barna study that has been done. For those of us that don't know, Barna is a organization that does some metrics and some polling for churches on church-related issues. So this was from 2019. It says here that in the U.S., between the ages of 18 to 29 years old, 64% of those that have grown up in the church do not return to church upon entering college.
Wow. Okay.
So that's a pretty staggering statistic.
Yeah.
And I'm sure within the past couple of years, that statistic has gone up as well. So I think we are seeing a growing need for our young people to be equipped with sound biblical teaching on how they're able to live out their lives as Christians rather than just relying on things that are more pragmatic, like emotionally manipulating our young people with this entire youth group culture. I think what is helpful about having a college ministry at our church is that our college students, at least during the time they are home, they are equipped. We go over book studies. We have Bible studies. We have Q&As once in a while.
Yep.
And just even events where we're able to grow as brothers and sisters. I think these are things that help us understand the importance of a church, how we are able to remain steadfast, especially when on our college campuses, which at times can be the most liberal and places that challenge our faith in Christ around this country. For us to be equipped in these ways, I think is very helpful for our students. And our hope is that, at least here at CGS, those that graduate, go from high school to college and enter into young adulthood, our hope is that they are equipped with the correct teaching, that they are able to live out their lives in light of that teaching. I think that's what we see is the importance of this ministry. And I think, like Brian said, it's not like college ministry is its separate entity away from the church. So our focus is to help our college students understand the importance of the church, how they, in their young adulthood, can serve, can be a participant in the community as well. So I think these are all things that continue to go through our minds as we teach and instruct our college students.
So I think one of the difficulties with college ministry is that because our church isn't geographically located really near any colleges, we are what people would tend to call a home church, right? And so I know that, most of our college students are here with us during the summer, and then they go to their respective schools during the fall and the spring. So I guess there's that obstacle of distance, and there's that obstacle of keeping these students accountable while they're on their campus. And so what does the college ministry do to kind of, navigate through these difficulties?
I think, like I said before, a good chunk of our work with the college students in person happens during the breaks. But throughout the school year, we actually do things like we reach out to them on a regular basis to see how they're doing, how we pray for them. We also often do visitations. I think the farthest I've gone to visit a college student was a couple of years ago. We flew out to Michigan and we were able to have sharing the meal with our students that are on campus, and pray for them and see anything else that we can do to support them and encourage them while they're on campus. And we also send out care packages to our students,
Yeah.
just encouraging them. We usually have a short note from Pastor Eugene, as well as some of the supplies that they might need being on campus away from home. So I think throughout the majority of the year, our ministry focuses on how we can encourage and pray for our students while they are away.
Yeah, I think it's good to mention that because oftentimes our church members would see our college students during the breaks and the events that we have, because we have a lot of events for our college students throughout the summer break or the winter break, but they may not be aware of all the stuff that really goes on throughout the school year. And so I thought it'd be good. I have a quick question for the men's ministry as well. How young can you be? Or no, let me reverse that. How old can you be to be a part of Gravitas? And the reason why I ask this is because we have 7 very highly energetic boys that are in our youth group. And so I guess where is the cutoff? Is there a cutoff, or how would you kind of navigate, a youth student wanting to be a part of Gravitas?
I think that's a great question. We do encourage, men, boys of all ages in our church to come out and attend. Even I think the first event that we had some of the guys from the Young and Gathered
Oh yeah.
ministry come out. And
We
one of the cool
squatted
thing
up.
was also they came with their fathers, right?
Yes,
Like
yes,
some of them,
yes.
their fathers sat in. And I think that's another thing that it's great to mention is, one of the things we always try to push people to, I guess, growing is even just their understanding of what it means to be a family that worships together.
Oh yeah.
So I hope that, if there are men or boys in this church who are on the younger side and they want to come through, I think it'd be great if, they're even the fathers in the church come out with them.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Brian. We talked about the books that we're going over, and I think our listeners may be curious as to the content of what we learn in the Gravitas ministry or the Scattered ministry. So could you guys just kind of go over the content of what you're learning, what you're teaching, maybe some books that they're reading, and I think that'd be very helpful.
The Scatter Ministry for this summer, we have actually started going over this book by a pastor that I appreciate. His name is Paul Washer. He wrote a book called The Essential Means of Grace. And The Essential Means of Grace, this book is addressing what is commonly known as the ordinary means of grace. The ordinary means of grace is something that we see in the Bible as the means, meaning these are the things that God has given to his people to communicate and to show us his grace.
Gotcha.
And this word ordinary, this adjective that is attached to it, I think confuses a lot of people. Aren't we supposed to have extraordinary faith? And I think these are questions that do come up. But what we see as we study the scriptures is that the means of grace, which in the book we are going to cover topics such as the importance of the church, prayer, preaching of scripture, and just the administration of sacraments. These are the means by which God gives to the church his grace. So when we talk about the ordinary means of grace, the adjective ordinary that comes before denotes 2 things. One is that these means of grace are normative, meaning these are things that we should be expecting from church as God gives his grace, the benefits of redemption and our salvation to us through these means. These are the things by which we see God regularly communicating his grace to his believers. And the other sense of the word ordinary denotes the meaning of normal, meaning these are things that you don't have to have crazy superpowers to take part in these means of grace. Prayer, the sacraments, these are things that are readily available for all Christians. So this is not something that, you gain as you become a level 5 Christian. These are things that all Christians are able to partake in and enjoy the riches of God's grace in our lives. And I think a passage that we can focus on looking at is the end of Acts chapter 2. I believe it's verses 42 to 46.
Acts chapter 2, verse 42 to 46 reads, And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. And awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved.
And I think the heart behind us picking this book and even in seeing in this passage is that these are things that even the apostles, after Christ's ascension, as the New Testament church was established, have been practicing. So we are learning through the importance of the focusing on the teaching, the fellowship, the breaking of bread, and the prayers, and all of these things, and why they are essential for us to learn as Christians, as followers of Christ. And the hope is that, especially regarding what I mentioned before, we want to equip our college students with what the church, with an understanding of what the church is. So the hope is that through this study, our college students would not just see these things as as things that we do just out of tradition or habit, but understand why these traditions exist and why we take part in the Lord's table together, why we see baptisms happening at church, why we gather together to pray. So I think this study is very exciting for us, especially for the college leaders in being able to go over this study with our students. And I just wanted to just read question 88 of the Westminster Shorter Catechism. I think it kind of summarizes the importance of the means of grace. The question reads, what are the outward means whereby Christ communicates to us the benefits of redemption? And the answer goes, the outward and ordinary means whereby Christ communicates to us the benefits of redemption are his ordinances, especially the word, sacraments, and prayer, all of which are made effectual to the elect for salvation.
Gotcha. Thank you for that, James. Brian, what content will you be teaching or are you going over in Gravitas?
So the way that Gravitas is going to work this year is we actually are doing one book as a theme, similar to college, but we're also going to be doing other books kind of throughout the year as well. So all the events will be based around that one book, which is The Masculine Mandate by Dr. Richard Phillips. And rather than explain it, he actually focuses on one verse throughout the whole book, which is Genesis 2:15, which is the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. And so as I was explaining before about how sometimes we don't even have a definition of, what a man is or what his role is in this world, he just lays it out very clear for us. One of the aspects that the man is supposed to do and that God created Adam with the intent to do is to work and to keep, right? He placed him in the garden to work and keep it. And
so what are they in Hebrew, Brian? Quick test for you because you went to Westminster.
Avad and Shamar.
That was quick.
Very quick. It's not like we looked it up beforehand or anything like that. But yeah, Adam was placed in the garden. He was created with this mandate, this masculine mandate to work and keep the garden. And Dr. Richard Phillips, I think he does a great job in taking that from Adam, that principle from Adam, and applying it to all the spheres that we have today now in life, right? How are you going to be a worker and a keeper, let's say, even in your relationships with your other brothers? How are you going to be a worker and keeper in your family? How are you going to be a worker and keeper in your workplace, right? And so these are the principles that he's just been, he goes through over and over in this book about how we're supposed to do it, how we're supposed to apply that. As we are going through this, we're actually going to be also going into some other books. We already had a book study on The Holiness of God by R.C. Sproul.
Yes.
Great book. I think a lot of people in the church have already read that book, but one of the reasons I wanted to do that book first is I want to move from an understanding of God's attributes and who God is into kind of the practical and then the work of practice later on. So we did Holiness of God. Hopefully we'll get to, in the future, we'll be able to get to What He Must Be to Marry My Daughter by Dr. Vodi Bakum.
Okay.
I think the title kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah.
Right? And then later on, after we finish Masculine Mandate, after we finish that book, we'll get to It's Good to Be a Man by Michael Foster, which I mentioned earlier on. And
Gotcha.
That book is that book basically talks about how I guess the war on not just gender roles, but even just gender in general.
Yeah.
Right? And how the biblical concept of the distinctions between man and woman are good and they're not things to be like apologized for or, to be always shying away from.
You see what I said about all roads lead to whatever Brian is passionate about? So, like, all roads lead to Mordor.
All of them. No, that's all roads lead to Rome, right? That's the expression?
Is it not Mordor?
Mordor is...
That is Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings,
my friend.
LOTR. Do they not say that? Is it all roads lead to Rome?
No, it's all roads lead to Rome, right?
I don't know.
Well, they don't. Not Route 80 anyway.
All roads.
Not
Yeah,
I-95.
all roads lead to Rome.
Can you look up all roads lead to Mordor? Did I make that up?
There's a book called All Roads Lead to Murder.
No, Mordor. Is there no such thing?
There's All Roads Lead to the MotorCity.com.
Okay, it's not motor, it's not murder, it's Mordor. But anywho, thank you for those answers, brothers. I think that's great content that we are learning as college students or as men within our church, the Gravitas and the Scattered Ministry. I wanted us to just talk about maybe some of the events that are going to be happening in the upcoming months so that our men and our college students could be equipped with the dates and that they would be encouraged to attend.
Sure. So, going back to the theme that we had of the masculine mandate, one of the things we're doing is we're dividing up the months and the events by theme. So currently we're in the section that's men in the church. And one of the surprising things was actually when we had our first event, we gave out suggestion cards for people to fill out. And I basically tallied what were the top suggestions that people wanted to do. And one of the top suggestions that the men wanted to do was actually serve Edify. And so I think that was pretty awesome to hear. So one of the things we're going to be doing in the next month in August is we're going to serve the church. Right?
Wow, okay.
Yeah. And so we'll have a teaching with that as well. But basically, the schedule is being revised, especially because now we have more suggestions of what people want to do. We definitely had like a list of things before, but we also want to cater to activities that people might be interested in. So there will be revisions, but we are looking forward to some other events in the future, such as getting to know the husbands and the fathers of the church more.
Okay.
How can the single men learn from people who have gone before them in that stage of life? Things like that. And then later on, when we get into men in the world, we're going to talk about, work in faith, even evangelism. And so those are things to look forward to. And this is all kind of culminating, leading up to the men's retreat in January. So, just a lot of things to be excited for.
For the college group, we have two major events coming up outside of our regular Sunday gatherings. And just a side note, our college students do gather in room 203 every Sunday from after service around 12 to around 1:30. And that's when we're going over the book. But at the end of this month, from the 29th to the 31st, from the evening of Friday to Sunday morning, we'll be coming back to church. The college students will be going away for a short getaway to the Poconos, and we'll share in a time of worship as well as activities and just sharing in our meals together. So we're really looking forward to that. And also in August, every year we do a church-wide send-off for our college students. So as they leave and go back to their campuses, or even for our local students as they look forward to beginning a new semester, we come together with the church to encourage them, to pray for them, and to send them off with just a nice meal. So I think that's something that we are also looking forward to.
Oftentimes college students would go to Poconos for different things, but I'm glad that our church is redeeming the Poconos by making it a holy, godly trip. I wanted us to also talk about these events because I think there is intention behind these events, right? Just because we have a send-off doesn't mean we're just doing it for the sake of having a meal or for the sake of having a banquet. And even when we do events for, Gravitas, we're not doing it just for the sake of doing it. There is intention that is prayed through and thought through for these events. And so, I want to highly encourage our men and highly encourage our college students to attend these events, to go to the meetings, to learn, and to just have fellowship with the church. I think these are great ministries to be a part of. Last but not least, I wanted to ask you guys, are there prayer requests that you guys have that we as the church can pray with you, pray for you for?
I think because our church is still a young church and a growing church, that number, the number of students that have been transitioning into college ministry has dwindled down quite a lot in the past many years. So, and I don't take that as a necessarily a negative thing. I think one of the prayer requests that we do have is that we would be faithful with the numbers that we're given, meaning we do all that we can to serve everyone that is under our care.
Right.
And I think that's the heart of every leader of our ministry. I think another prayer request that we do have is, with that being all that being said, for our college leaders to consider how we can go out and evangelize to college students maybe around their area that need a home church, to be able to also share the gospel with them and to have them join our community. So I think those are things that have started in discussion. So I think for the college ministry, we want to be faithful in the time that we are in, especially as we are low in our number of college students that we are taking care of at this point. We don't want to take this time lightly, and we, especially in this season, want to continue to prepare for what God might use the college ministry in the future for. So I think those are some of the prayer requests that we have.
I guess 2 prayer requests for the men's ministry. One is our men's desire for personal sanctification. I'm sure it is a prayer request for just the overall church in general, but I think we're coming to a place where our church is understanding the difficult times that we're in terms of political and ideological things that are going on out there. But I think one thing that's important is for us to never lose focus also of our own personal sanctification, our desire to become more holy and mature in our walk, right? Like, it's easy to, I guess, be like me and be angry at CRT all the time, but it's a harder thing to also examine yourself and to see what kind of flaws that we have and places that we can grow as well. And so that's one of my prayers. But then I think another one that's great is, I hope that our men also continue to become disciples who make disciples, right? We talk about this masculine mandate of working and keeping. And I think there's a responsibility for the men as well, especially as they're called to be, those who lead the church, who work. How are we working and building up the relationships and the disciples in our own church, right? And a lot of that consists of, older men leading younger men, those who are more mature in the faith leading those who are newer in the faith. And I hope that's something that our men begin to desire and see the reward, and how God glorifying that is as well.
Thank you, brothers, for sharing about the ministries that you are serving and leading in, and sharing with us these prayer requests and how we as the church can pray alongside you. We thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. Join us next week as we will be joined by yet another special guest as we talk about Young and Gathered, our youth group ministry. It's going to be a blast. It's going to be fun. You do not want to miss out on that episode. We hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. Fight the good fight. Finish the race. Keep the faith.
Peace.
Oh my goodness.